While networking remains relegated to mostly remote and virtual means these days, our on-screen personas matter even more. And as professional colleagues get a glimpse of each other's personal lives on a daily basis in video meetings, it might be the perfect time to think about working on your branding. As many seek new work opportunities, how can the thoughtful design of your online and social media representation help to create new connections and build your business? What are the ways that your personal style can become a brand that makes you memorable? Can the principles of experience design apply to ourselves? Hello, and welcome back to the Tide Generator podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten Nelson. And now that we consume everything through these screens, it's time we looked at experience design from a new angle, our online persona. We're going to talk about branding design and the many ways we can make ourselves memorable online, but hopefully always in a good way. So today I have three very special guests that are all experts in this very notion of creating a very amazing and memorable online presence. So welcome everyone. With me today I have Rainey Fu. She is an art director and founder of Design Never Sleeps. Hello.
Hi, Kirsten, and thanks for having me today. It's such an honor.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you. And we have Chris Neto. He is Market Development Manager at Starin, a Midwich company. Welcome.
Thanks, Kirsten. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And we have Hanane Abdalla, Audience Engagement Manager with AVIXA. This is an AVIXA podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Yeah. Well, welcome. I'm so glad this is just the perfect group of people to be talking about this topic because every single one of you come from a different angle on it, and you all have a really amazing dynamic presence on the internet. I think I want to dig right in and start with Rainey because kind of at the beginning of these crazy new times, you took the initiative to start an online masterclass to help people improve their online presence. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Rainey Fu from, I'm an art director in New York right now. And I'm also the founder of this group called Design Never Sleeps. And it comes from the idea of like cities never sleeps and hence design never sleeps. And the idea was to do a 7 weeks masterclass where we connect designers and in branding from different cities into New York through the only thing that we can do right now, which is through remote Zoom calls, and to help local businesses in New York to get back on their feet during this quarantine time by providing them with like branding ideas and more like social media of how they can help their own businesses as well. So it has been a good 6 months journey so far, and I've gone through 3 batches of people, their participants that are part of this initiative. And I think so far we have done maybe like 6 or 7 local businesses, and it has been doing really well. And everybody appreciates what we did, and as well as the participants that do that manage to get the kind of industrial experience of working with real local brands like in New York. And I think it's like a win-win situation for everyone, and everyone seems to be more bond together in this difficult times of not seeing everyone during quarantine. And that's what I've been doing these few months.
Oh yeah, creating connections. That's good. Like real life connections created through making stuff for all these online and social media outlets. It's nice, like when people can work together to make sure their message is resonating, and it really feels personal that way. That's pretty cool. But yeah, and actually, Chris, you've obviously seen just a little bit of that on the AV Tweep side. You've seen quite a lot of people build their persona online. I guess, how do you feel about that, the aspect of sort of tech-centric people trying to add a little bit more of their personal brand into the mix when they do their online persona?
Wow. So there is a contradiction in what you just said.
Yeah.
Person with persona, it kind of rubs the wrong way. Like, what tech nerd has persona outside being geeky and working behind an equipment rack, which is what most AV people are. That's their comfort zone. You can have a persona, right? It does go into the type of person you are. Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? I think that the internet has opened up a lot of people that could have been classified more or less as introverted type people. Some are referred to as keyboard warriors because they have the gusto to have their opinions put out on the internet, and that's empowering to a lot of people. So if that's what you need to bring out who you are, then so be it. So quarantine comes and everybody kind of shuts down, right? Not literally, obviously businesses are going, kind of quiet for a couple of days trying to figure out, oh, this is 2 weeks and what are we going to do? But you know what? We're just going to be locked down for 2 weeks. Now we're on month 6, month 7, month 8. We're rolling into fall of, we're in fall, we're going into 2021. What most people, I think, were not expecting was that long haul. So I've been doing this now for about 10 years, 10, 11 years roughly on the social channels, started with LinkedIn and built kind of my online presence as who I am, representative of me. Who I am online is who I am in person. For people that have not met me in person, when I go to an InfoComm show, I am the same person that I am here. On the interwebs, I don't change very much. There's some people that actually create personas to be online. But the minute that you are put on video, you are exposed as to who you are. So if you thought you were smart, stay off video because you can only fake it till you make it to a certain point. But, for me, I was one of the first people, kind of out there that kind of just stepped up and said, you know what, I can do this. I've been building for this, right? Why did you get on social media? Why'd you get on Twitter, but not to live on, on this digital plane, essentially? So, when everybody was shutting down and companies are kind of like trying to figure out what it is and didn't invest their time and effort into being social or having a community or building the community, I kind of looked and said, you know what, I'm ready. I've been preparing for this all my life. It's like, there's the spotlight, there's the stage. Let's go. Let's perform. Let's help, right? More importantly. So as people were going into the lockdown, I was coming out of lockdown and saying, you know what, you can do this. It's not that hard. Let's all bond together online. Let's continue to forward our community of audiovisual nerds. And let's be a little bit more vocal. And, we're all here. We're all in this together, which is something you keep hearing. I should make a T-shirt and sell it. But we're all in this together. And, having this online digital platform, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you choose, was a good way for us as humans to have that interaction, though it's not physical or in the same room or in the same space. So got to make the best of what is handed to you. And when somebody hands you lemons, you know what to make.
Yeah, hopefully something delicious. All right. Do I know? I mean, have I ever made lemonade? I don't know. But but during quarantine, I sure did learn a lot about how to cook and things like that. But yeah, well, cool. Well, yeah, and Hanane, and similarly, this is your grand debut of a vast amount of experience that you have brought to AVIXA, because you're an audience engagement manager with AVIXA, but your background has been, you've done a lot with teaching some reluctant social media users, some people who weren't quite sure if they could get online. You've taught workshops for minority women and trying to help them engage in ways that they can get more opportunity. So yeah, I guess talking about all of this, we're talking about people trying to get themselves ready for some sort of online presence. How do you feel like, how can people create relatable content that actually connects with who they really are in real life?
Yeah, I think, man, everything that everybody said already, I'm like over here, like sending the emoji praise hands. Like it's so good because one, I do think that this time has really revealed to me how important connection is to all of us. And even just like all of the Tide Generator podcasts, one of the underlying themes is connection, right? We're connecting through technology. We're connecting with each other interpersonally, but the ultimate goal is to feel like you're seen and heard. And, I feel like I can kind of understand where you're coming from, Chris, because I feel like I came into this like pandemic, like this is an opportunity for all of us to shine. And not everybody feels that way, because when you go online, it feels like it's a popularity contest, right? Like there's people who are these big figures. And like you said, Chris, like you're a big figure in AV, people, you're a big deal. You're a big deal in my eyes. And I say that because you do it through authentic branding, but you've built it over time. And I love that you stress that fact, is that it takes time. And it's not going to happen overnight. And I think over time, for me personally, I have a brand on Instagram, the Sunshine Strategy, and that's just where I talk about empowerment, and I lead other women and just people alike to really put a voice to their vision, right? And I think whatever it is that you want, you can find something that somebody's going to be relatable to. I am a plant mom, y'all. So I have my plant up here, and I've had this plant up here for a while. It wasn't just for the sake of the podcast. Like, she lives there. I haven't named her yet, but point being, I know we've talked about this. Like, people will relate to you on something that you don't even think is going to be relatable content, right? Like you don't know that the CEO of the company that you're trying to maybe connect with loves plants. And thus, when you talk about being a plant mom or a plant dad on a Monday, it might attract the attention and just be a warm connection, so that you can start having those conversations. And it's so cool, because I think it's just giving us a better connection, or better ability to insert ourselves as humans, right? Like, we get to see each other from the behind the scenes and not just from the transactional standpoint. And I feel like it's an opportunity for us to do that. Like, not to shy away from it. Just be you. Wear your hair curly, do what you got to do.
Yeah, that sounds like to what Rainey's been talking about too, about that showing some of those personal attributes of who you are and what you love, that can kind of show people what you might bring to their enterprise, to their business, or as a vendor. I know, Rainey, you had kind of mentioned that the idea of talking about showing your personal side, so that you can talk about the cultural ad you could be, basically what you can add to a business.
Yeah, for sure. Like, after hearing what Hanane said, it's just so inspiring, because that has been what all of us are trying to find out, more so than just what is transactional, like what she mentioned earlier. And I think that's like saying that each one of us has an individual story to tell. That's not just a culture fit, in terms of we're not just fitting into a company or fitting into a culture, but it's more so how we can add on to it. And for example, in that sense earlier, it was like being a plant mom, and then you get to connect with like the CEO of a big company that maybe sparks some other interests out of there. Because I don't think all of us live in a very parallel, like just a very focused
like two-dimensional, like world.
Dimensional, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth, like so it was more so like, what is your cultural ad, and how to uncover that is you have to find out your cultural advantage. Like, each one of us has our own cultural advantage. Like, I'm Asian, I'm a woman, I'm immigrant, I'm from Singapore. And what's my advantage is, like, maybe I can connect between two different cultures. Maybe it's all about being a woman in this space, in the marketing and branding space. And then also like your identity in terms of, my parents, they're chefs, and like your parents are not, like, every single body comes from somewhere else, and how it sort of lead me into doing design, because it's like culinary arts, and lead me to like designing stuff, and your circumstances, and like where you have been and why. So I think all of us came to New York for a reason. I think now that I know, like the four of us here that we're talking right now, we have been like been through the hard New York, and at this point right now during quarantine, we have so much time to think about how we are and why we are here and what we do in the past. So it all comes in a very good opportunity at this point right now to really find out more about ourselves and what's our culture at in that sense during this very, very quiet time that mainly we are just by ourselves most of the time. And yeah, I think that's a very big part of personal branding. And that's something that, we can just record the process of doing that rather than the final product as it comes along.
Yeah, that is.
Can I add to that? Because both of you said, both Hanane and Rainey both said something regarding the culture. I am very representative of where I am. I grew up in New Jersey, a blue collar mentality with a blue collar family of immigrants that came over. I'm first generation American. I didn't speak English when I went to school, and I learned how to speak English thanks to Sesame Street. Word up. Thank you, Big Bird. It was. I got to sit there. My grandmother lived with us. I'm old school. My grandmother lived with us and only talked Portuguese, so I had to learn Portuguese before I learned English. So, I think I still speak the language and I'm still involved in that. But one thing that is very apparent with me and my online persona is that I'm very Jersey. And I've had to explain that to a couple of people that follow me from the UK, not the Isle of Jersey, but the state of New Jersey and everything that is kind of representative with it. And I reflect that a lot online. Like, I will fight people that tell me that they need pineapple on pizza. That is a trigger comment that if I put that out there, it incites riots. It's weird. AV people are very passionate about pineapple on pizza, but when I do that,
general, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
exactly.
Not on this call.
So, and on top of it, it's funny you bring up the culture and the food aspect, Rainey, because that I spent many years working through Italian restaurants and pizzerias, not because of that's what I did through college, right? And so I understand a little bit about food, but I'm not a chef. But man, do I have some strong opinions regarding pizza. At the same token, I have some strong opinions about where I'm from, right? I will put that it's, New Jersey against the rest of the world. And yes, I upset New Yorkers. There's things that I've learned on social media that are kind of in the same vein. I won't talk about race, sex, politics, religion. That's kind of like the taboo things that I don't want to talk about, because that's not part of what it is that I am and how I want to talk about that online. Certain things are left to be personal. One thing I've learned that I can't talk about, because when I do, it always kind of stirs the pot a bit outside the pineapple and pizza comment. I'm very reluctant to talk about sports teams because I am a New York fan through and through. So there is going to be some Red Sox fans that are not going to be happy when I say I'm a fan of XYZ. So it's your culture and where you're from even is part of the fabric that who you are. So, it's something that when you're thinking about what your brand is, what you are and what you envelop is, you have to have kind of a little bit of a map of where you want to be and how you want to be. Twitter, I'm kind of a little bit all over the place, and I've opened up over the past couple years to really show like, hey, this is what I'm eating. I always thought that was kind of dumb, but some people, because I started traveling, people wanted to see, hey, where you at? And I ended up befriending somebody from the Food Network who was a Food Network chef. So when I traveled, I would send him a message. I'm like, hey man, I'm in this town. He goes, go to here, this barbecue place, knock on the door 3 times and tell them that Carl sent you. I'm like, okay, weird, but the best barbecue I've ever had was knocking 3 times on a door. That's the kind of stuff that you can really take on. Now, if you are a brand representing a brand, that's what I will default to the brand experts in Hanane and Rainey, because I'm learning. Anything I've learned that is brand related, marketing related, goes back to my culture, because I learned how to market on the street. All right. When you're kind of like what I was, I also did a little DJing when I was in school. If I wanted to bring people to a nightclub, I had to create flyers. If the nightclub was packed, Chris got another gig. So I quickly learned that I have to learn how to market. And it was street team mentality. For those that grew up in the 90s, it was mixtapes and it was flyers and it was stuff that was being handed out by hand. The difference between that and what we do on Twitter today is that mixtape is now, here's my Spotify list, right? And it's a digital transformation of a physical of what you did then, right? And all part of that is, this is who I am, this is how I'm marketing. And I learned, but I've never studied it. So it's really word of mouth and, staying consistent with your brand is how I've done it. I'm hoping that the experts would say that maybe you've done it right or maybe you've done it wrong. Either way, it's worked for me, but I think it could have been better. So.
Yeah.
I should have pointed to somebody.
I'm like, there's so much to add. You said so many great things. I know, right? I think for me, I also kind of, I don't want to say I grew up on learning on the streets, but I kind of did. I mean, I started working with social media 7-8 years ago and started it all on my own. I was in a completely different industry and completely transitioned over. So I get where you're coming from. I don't know if there's any right or wrong way to do it, right? I mean, there's clearly certain things that you avoid from a branding standpoint, but at some point, I think now it is very prevalent that values matter, right? It's a very prevalent time at this moment that there, to some extent, there needs to be a stand put in place, especially when people's lives are at stake. And so, that's probably as much as I'll say on that, because I think that there's just so much more to that conversation. And there was a really great conversation, small plug, on the Tide podcast. I think it was the last one, if not the one before. And Kirsten, you could tell people, the folk, what it was, but in the title of the podcast. But it's really cool because we're starting to have those conversations about how values matter from the CEO down, right? Like people are looking at, and even from a board standpoint, people are looking at every single individual and determining from a sales standpoint whether or not they're going to take their investment of money or time and invest it into that brand. And whether that's like sending, sharing content even. I mean, there are people who will like completely ban a company because of something that the CEO has said because their values don't align. And there's two statistics that I thought about. There's a Nielsen study about buying decisions, and I've had a little bit of work on sales, and I've done some lead generation, but where basically most consumers in the US consult basically a social media channel. I think about 54% of information is what is used for the consumer buying. And then there was another one that talked about how the information found on your social media channel can influence about 75% of a B2B transaction, so B2B buyers. So if you're looking at like the return of investment, because you did mention that a little bit, Chris, like the ROI is real. And it's almost like social media and the digital space has hacked this sales cycle, right? Like that traditional sales cycle of awareness, that first stage, like social media has hacked it. And it's so important that there is either a value alignment in order for consumers that are like way smarter nowadays. Like we know like just about everything is at the tip of our, like at the fingertip, at our fingertips, right? We can find any information. And so what does your social media brand look like? And how are your employees even engaging on a staff level, and how are they showing up into these spaces? Because every single connection that anybody has with one of our AVIXA employees it makes a difference, right? And it actually impacts you. I buy a lot of stuff off of Instagram, so maybe that's also why I'm buying this. I'm like, click, that looks interesting.
Yeah, me too.
You too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a long game. It's the patience. You've all been talking about the sort of long-term aspects of this, as you're developing who you are, it's being consistent, it's being patient, it's gradually adding in elements about yourself that start to reveal the full picture of who you are, and that can create new ways for people to connect with you, as you guys have been saying. I guess that's the next part of this whole the whole picture of trying to put yourself online is capturing more of the process, as Rainey has been talking about a little bit, capturing the process and not just doing the perfect finished product, right? Is that what you were talking about, Rainey, before?
Yeah. I truly believe that for anybody to start off a social media account right now, like from 0 followers, it's all about capturing the process rather than the final product. And the reason why I say that was the one big reason is because I felt that the longer you waited till the final product is done, the least you would start posting stuff online because of the pressure, of the internal pressure that you give yourself. It's up to perfection. It was the idea of like, being perfect you have to be perfect. If not, you wouldn't post anything. And I think that counters the whole idea of finding yourself, finding your own voice through the process. And one very good example was because I also started painting like food stuff and food paintings, and then people start DMing me for like local businesses started DMing me and wanting to buy the prints, and then that's how I get to know more local businesses that ended up helping like design our sleeves, and it sort of go back a full circle of connecting the dots and connecting my passion into the what I actually want to do, and I think that helps to sort of drive yourself into a place where you found your own brand in that sense. And through posting, you get more than just once a week. You can start doing it like every other day because you're just recording the process. It's so much easier to do that. And then that drives consistency too. Like as the more you post, the more you will find and realize that your posts are starting to look similar, or your interests are starting to relate to each other. And I think that's how you find that consistency, also by just really just do it, like just start posting on social media. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in that process too, I know that we talked a little bit about trying to avoid being too marketing-y, right? Like having too many just ads, and making sure you're actually putting some personality into all these posts too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to add on to what you just said, Rainey, because I feel like what you said was it really touched on something that is like a deep, like an intrinsic trigger for me with like the limiting beliefs, right? Because I think so many of us have these limiting beliefs that we can't show up as ourselves, or like I can't be another Rainey who paints food, which you need to teach me at some point. Probably will buy something off you. I mean, anyway, but it's I think so I'll talk about it from the AVIXA standpoint, because that is stuff that I teach as well. And I love that you do that from that ground level. And it's like, I love that philosophy. That is so cool. But even from our employees, I think our employees are like our first advocates, right? It's like if we're developing content, I know Chris, as a manager, like our goals as manager is to continuously better our employees. And whether that's basically helping them engage our current brand, the brand that we're representative of, or as our personal brands, which also kind of intertwine with our brands and where we work. And sometimes people have that apprehension of like, well, what should I, like, I don't want my employer to see that, or like, there's just all these kind of limiting beliefs of who you can be for your employer. And that kind of triggered an initiative that I started, and it's our social media digest. And that essentially it's like small digestible digital bites that you can consume and share, right? So one thing that we've done is on a weekly basis showed individuals who are a little bit more reluctant, or who maybe are a little bit like on the introductory side of social media, that like, you could just click to tweet this, you can take this and you can put it on social media and you can add your own twist to it. This is something that's really engaging. And, this is a piece about the NBA and that's relevant to the news. So this is how you can tie in your personal brand to, what's happening and what's relevant. And so it's almost like it starts to break down those limiting beliefs and those walls, so that your employees can start not even just engaging in your own brand, but also start building their own brand. Because at the end of the day, like, you want to be like a Chris who gets, sponsorship deals left and right, and like a Rainey who gets, PR packages. So to be able to do that from a internal kind of communication standpoint has been something that we're seeing is pretty beneficial. And I think we're only in like week 10 right now. And so I'm collecting the data, and I'll get back to you guys about that, but it's really cool to see that. And I think for me, more than anything, it's cool to see people engage that would not have otherwise. And then ask the questions like, well, how about this? And how can I do this? And how can I, and ultimately like your digital presence is your online CV, right? Like it's your resume. So your connections and your network can start from just that. You sharing some content and then you being able to engage with somebody on content that you like. And then you being able to like, you know, sell yourself and get some new mics for free, like Chris.
It's not like Chris. Okay, let's clarify this.
I know, I'm kidding. I'm partially kidding, but also like
you're putting me on a spot, Hanane. Now I have to explain. So, going back to when I first started this, I basically said I'm going to try this out, and I was in it for the long haul, which means that I basically set aside what was a 5-year plan that I loosely wrote on the back of a napkin. I know 5-year plans in 2020 are crazy ideas right now. If you have a 3-week plan, you're lucky, let alone a 5-year plan. But I basically said that in 5 years, this is what I expect to see from it. Not having any historical data outside of the books that I read and the 3 months it took for me to actually hit send on, on a first tweet or to sign up for Twitter and stuff like that. Because I wanted to come in fully prepared. And I completely understand anybody who's watching this right now and going, that's me, right? You don't want to hit send on that tweet because you don't know if your boss is going to approve it. If it's controversial, think twice. We're adults at this point.
Like with your
right?
manager. Right?
Yeah, like you can self-manage yourself. If it's semi-controversial, it is. And you may get more controversy out of saying that you like the New York Yankees than you would about XYZ brand not delivering, right? Like, so let's put this in perspective. If you are going to get into this game, prepare for a long haul. It doesn't happen overnight. Not all of us can jump on a skateboard and drink a little cranberry juice and find success. Now, it has not happened to me. Everything that I've ever done has been a slow, organic pace, right? And I'm cool with that. What that has done is that for me, it's community building more so than my own who I am. Because to me, it's more important that I have this group of people that I can have these meaningful conversations, because at some point I don't know everything. Right. So if you are of the curious type personality, getting online is going to be a great place, because you know what? You'll always find somebody who can help you, give you an answer for this. And all you have to do is attach a little hashtag to it. Next thing you know, this happens. When AV in the AM, which is the Sunday conversation that I started, when that started, I took a picture of a coffee cup, and I've said this a million times, so people are bored, and I apologize if this is the millionth time you're hearing this. I took a picture of a coffee cup that I had, and I answered a question that somebody had regarding Amazon Alexa, and I'm surprised mine didn't go off. So when I said Amazon Alexa and the use in corporate space, that turned into somebody asking follow-up questions to that, and so on and so forth. Next thing you know, I had about 5-10 people on a Sunday morning at 8, very dad time for me, because I got up to do pancakes and breakfast for my kids. And, so I'm flipping pancakes and answering questions. Next week, I took a picture of my coffee cup. I said, that was nice that we had this last week. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. I may be the only creature up at this hour. Not a creature was stirring except for this dad in this house. So I took a picture, and I took a picture of my coffee cup, and I said, good morning. And somebody said, hey, what are we talking about this week? And I was not prepared. So I quickly had to make a couple Google things. Say, hey, last week we talked about voice control in corporate. You want to talk about this? All of a sudden, 2-3 years later, there is a community built around this, and they wait for 8 o'clock in the morning when I release 5 questions that people chew on all day, argue about all day, and it turns into controversial topics because I can't control where the conversation goes. All I'm doing is aiding it. So, the organic side to it, I don't set out and say, I'm going to do this because this is going to be this. Right? I waited online for 11 years or 8 years, I guess, because it's been 2 years since AV and AM started. I waited 8 years to have an aha moment, right? I've had other ones previous to that, but this has been the one that's been the longest and most enduring of them all. And, it started with a coffee cup. So for those that are sitting here and listening and going, I can't become an expert. I don't want to dedicate the time. So you can't be on all day, right? But you can come on once or twice a day and pop something up that is meaningful. That is maybe you. Maybe it's pertinent to what you're doing. It depends on where you're at. So in the 11 years that I've been doing this, one of the things that I've watched is I'm going to become, the person who jumps online, tries to figure this out right before a trade show, gets all loud, hey, here I am, I'm going, and then disappears. Whoop, gone. I don't even bother. There's not going to be a follow. There's not going to be a like, because I kind of got the energy. I get where you're going, right? And then there's others that are dedicated to it, and they just are that they have time on Wednesdays because their schedule permits it, or maybe they're sitting outside waiting for their kids to come out of a karate class, and they, you can almost get the patterns, right? When I used to sit and wait for my son to leave for karate, I was on Twitter. Right. And when I was waiting for conference rooms to be emptied, I was on LinkedIn and I was learning something. You can take the time and learn this. It's dedicated. It's like any other craft. It's like any other skill. But one of the things that does come out of this, right? If you want to refer to this as a hustle, right? If this is your grind, if this is what you're getting up to do every day, eventually what will happen is that if you continue doing this and you continue making yourself known, you won't have to introduce yourself, right? And that is where you want to be, right? Because I am not a CEO. I don't run a trade organization. I am just an average Joe. I get up every morning, I put my pants on the same way as everybody else. But there are times when I walk into a place and I don't have to introduce myself, and I know why that is that, right? And it's because for 11 years, I've been working on my online presence and my digital brand, which is me. And no matter where I work and who I work for, I'm representative of that. So whoever's hiring me, right? Currently, I work for Starin, which is part now of Midwich, right? I've been here for 2 years. They absolutely saw where I was going and they understood the value of social, and that's why I'm here, right? So, your employer can look to your past records. Like, they can Google me, right? And if there's anything controversial, it's going to be up there. So when I got into this 11 years ago, I knew that we were basically doing, a lot of people refer to them as a digital footprints or whatever. This is like digital cave drawings. I am telling my story on a daily basis through small 280, character tweets, or whether it's postings on LinkedIn, or if it's a picture of my food on Instagram, whatever the case may be, I am leaving a piece of me there for permanent record. And I am very aware of that. And when you have that self-awareness that you are doing something that you may think may be small or menial or, insignificant, people can go back and look at that. So again, be careful what you're doing, but come out with a plan. It may not be your Facebook. It may not be for Aunt Susie to watch, and we don't, that's, you can lock down your Facebook and do all your, if that's where you want to go to do political posts, so be it. You're all entitled to whatever you want to do. I'm a big believer in freedom of speech. But you have to be self-aware and prepared to deal with, hey, what about this posting back in 2013? Because that's come back and haunted celebrities in the past. It could come back and haunt the technician who was looking for a new job. So please be aware of that. But back to Hanane, I went off on a tangent. Back to your thing. It's been a very, very slow, kind of glacier pace grind to get to where I am today, and I'm still not there, right? Because there's still places I still have to introduce myself. Especially outside of AV, nobody knows who I am. It's awesome. But, and masks work. This is the great part about masks. I can't wait till InfoCon when we can mask up and not be ourselves. But anyway, outside of that, I'm one of those people who, I honestly believe that this process can work for everybody, even the people that are reluctant to be extroverted. But if you are sharing who you are and things that are meaningful to you and meaningful to the community, more importantly, the community, people that have the same like and the same mind set, That's actually going back to a quote, something you said earlier, Kirsten. I've taken this time to expand my knowledge, not just within AV. Everybody's been grinding on the AV thing, learning how to do better audio and video and getting certifications. My head has been someplace completely different. I pop in my headphones, I go for walks, and I listen to people like Jay Shetty and mindset podcasts, and trying to figure out a better way to be mindful, because I can learn how to send sound down a piece of copper any day, but to improve myself on a daily basis, that's what I taken out of this quarantine, is that I expanded, similar to Rainey, who was, who went back into painting. I kind of stepped away from AV and listened to, marketing podcasts to understand, to translate what Hanane says in marketing, because to me, I'm like, I wish I knew what she was talking about, but until I completely go through the translator and understand, oh, that's what she means. So listening to that sort of stuff and expanding my knowledge, that is a big part of who I am. And a lot of that will come out in my social as well, because I find something that's worthwhile. I absolutely love listening to Chase Jarvis's show. And he's a photographer who's interviewing interesting people all over the world. And, that kind of stuff is what really I've been drawn to over this time, and it helps develop who I am. And every little thing you do and experience can go into your socials and part of your brand as well. But that's a very personal brand as opposed to company. So,
well, all of that is like the best aspect of what we need. Like all of that, take notes, because these are all the steps you can take to start establishing your brand online and be in it for the long haul. And I guess, maybe by way of wrapping up, we could talk about a couple more tips from Rainey and Hanane about what's kind of one thing people can do today. Those people, either people with 0 followers, people who are doing this the first time, people who've been sort of plugging away at this, but not really committed to bringing their full self online. I guess what's something they can work on right now?
Thanks, Rainey. You're so sweet. Okay. So the first thing that it keeps replaying in my head, Chris, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is and that goes back to the things that you were just talking about. I think more than anything, I've had this reoccurring kind of this new revelation over the past couple of months, and especially working in marketing and in communications and in my personal brand and with other smaller brands, that the numbers, while they seem big, right? So you might look at somebody who's already established their social presence, having that awareness of how much time it's taken and how much intention it's taken is an important factor. And I love that Chris said that you need to have a 5-year plan. And if you don't necessarily know what the future holds, I think one thing that I know I've always kind of lived by is that there's an art in consistency, and there's an art in follow-up. So whatever it is that you're doing, if you're connecting, if you're putting something out into the universe, knowing that there's going to be some sort of law of attraction and that something is going to come back, and you have to be prepared to react to that thing. And I'm loving the Jay Shetty reference, because that's exactly what it is. There's a higher level of consciousness that happens when you expand yourself to things around you, within AV, within design, everywhere. There's literally inspiration in anything. I talk about my plants and tie it to personal development. There's just something that you can learn and translate for other people so that they can expand their consciousness and then create some connection with it. I guess other tangible things is what I love to do, just from a personal standpoint, is I love connecting with people via voice notes. That's a very I don't know if you all know, on Instagram and on Facebook, when people reach out, for me personally, I'm like, my thumb has been on 100 and I'm using some Korean. I'm like, because I'm always using my thumb for social media. I use voice notes now. I take the time to respond to somebody personally, because one, they can hear the enthusiasm and the excitement in my voice. Maybe not after a really long day, but choose a time that works for you, and I'll respond with a voice note or even a video. I know a lot of my followers receive that. They'll see a personal video of me saying, hey, thank you for responding back to that. What was your feedback on that? And what I find value in is the feedback, right? There's the Gary V's of the world. That's what he always talks about, right? He talks about looking at the comments. He doesn't even look at the content. He looks at the comments, because that's what matters at the end of the day is, what are your viewers? What are your followers? What are your people who are engaging? What do they feel? And I guess just to wrap it up, it doesn't really matter what you say. It matters how the people feel when they've left, right? So whether it's an interpersonal connection, how did you feel when that person left your presence? Did you feel more calm? Did you feel more conscious? Did you feel, you know what I mean? Like, did you feel enlightened? Do you feel like you want to buy the product? How did that person feel when they've left your presence? And I think so much so we just get hung up on what we're about to say in that next tweet, that we forget to really tap into who we are and leave a really beautiful feeling with people. So that's it for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's like a lot of very good advice, Hanane. I have a few things that I would love to share with the listeners right now, for sure. Like, let's say if you have 0 followers at this point, there are a few things like actionable stuff that you can actually start on. So for example, if you're in the AV industry, you could start posting like a photo of something to do with, obviously I'm not from AV, so I couldn't speak on what really works in that field. But then there's also something like a hashtag expert that you can download. It's an app where you find out the top few hashtags that is related to your field or related to the photo that you're posting. And for me, that has worked superbly well, in the sense of putting myself from 0 followers to, say, 5 followers in a day. You know, you got to start somewhere, like in that sense. And that is something I've always followed. And the other thing also, speaking about consistency, like what Chris and Hanane, basically all of us mentioned, is that, you know, in the beginning you will always be like super passionate and super like on about starting something, and then halfway through, how are you gonna keep up to it? So I really like what Chris mentioned, to, you know, the Sundays morning where you have the coffee cup, because I think that it goes down to that. It goes down to a weekly scheduled thing that you have to do. So for example, I have a tag team Tuesdays on my food paintings. So I will work with like a food person to paint what the food person has taken a photo of. And that's like my Tuesdays. And every Tuesday I will post that, and somebody will be like, oh, okay, you know, oh, maybe there's something new on every Tuesday. And that's how they started following you, because they want to see what's happening every Tuesday, what's new, what's the new restaurants that just opened up in New York, what's the restaurant that unfortunately shut down during COVID. You know, people like to be culturally related in that sense, during, especially in this time during quarantine. I think just to provide the extra knowledge that all of us don't get to see now that we are all stuck at home. And then the other thing is, oh yeah, speaking of Jay Shetty and Gary Vee, I love both of them. I've always listened to a lot of inspirational and even like the mindset switching talks. And the other person that I really like is Lewis Howes. He has done the School of Greatness, where he interviewed Kobe Bryant. That was really good, RIP, but that was a really, really good podcast. And I think halfway through, you will get so beaten up by COVID, by staying at home. And I think to be able to tap into that extra resource of listening to something, to retrain your mind to think positively and manifest the thoughts that you want to manifest. I think that's a strength. That's a huge advantage that we can all take right now, especially everybody stuck at home. And yeah, and here and that's how you can get from, say, 0 followers to, say, 30 followers in a week. And I think having a set of structure really does help at this point.
Awesome. So I get to go last. Is that how? Because I got a handful of these. My first one that I have to share is start today. Right. For many years, I've I've looked at myself as an anomaly when I started doing social, because I was in my late 30s when I started doing this, right? I'm not a 20-something out of college or a 17-year-old in high school who is Instagram famous. I'm not that, but I know and I'm comfortable in who I am, right? At this moment, I'm 46 years old in my, the prime of my career. I have 20 years experience in the world of AV and 10 years experience on building myself, right? There are people that are going to be uber cautious that, you know what, I'm a dad, I'm a mom, what do I got to say? I'm too old. Don't let that get in the way. You will find a place to connect. You'll find a way to connect. And it doesn't matter if it's millennial, Gen Z, Gen X, which is where I sit. There are connection points to all of those. And it's not, so black and white that age is something that's going to stop you. So I encourage everybody, if you're going to start now. You've done your homework, start. The other part that I would say for people that are looking is find inspiration. Look at people that are doing it. Not necessarily the people in your own, in your own space, right? Because one of the things that I am going to say is find your community, find your people, because the people are not going to find you. Until I found the community, or until I found people of like-minded people, I was just Chris and I was tweeting into the abyss, right? So you have to find the people. You have to go to the people. That is something that even businesses now that are jumping into social are not quite getting. Just because you tweet doesn't mean that you're going to get instant everything. It doesn't come that way. You have to go to the people. And what are you doing, right? So start immediately. Obviously, in this day and age, if you're not comfortable with video, please get comfortable with video. Video first is the best way to get your mindset going. I have a 15-year-old daughter and her friend who just, this year, my daughter discovered what the busy signal was on a house phone. Like, she had never heard the busy signal for the first time in her life at 15. All right. While her friend 2 years ago, her and her friend were on a call, and I asked her to call her on the phone, and her friend did not know where how to make a phone call, like what the telephone number is, because they Snapchatted and video chatted for everything. So please get comfortable with video. If it's not for you personally, the generations that are coming up right behind us are video first. So please learn to develop the ability to be on camera and, try to break through the barrier of being, shy. In this day and age, obviously, of what we're going through, empathy is a huge word. It could be played out by now because everybody's telling you empathy, shoving it down your throat. But it's true. You don't know what other people are going through. And just because, you are doing okay doesn't mean everybody is. Right. I learned that the hard way, because here I'm thinking the world is completely shut down because I'm in New Jersey, and New Jersey's locked down a lot tighter than, say, Florida. Florida's like, what's your problem? Why can't you go to, what do you mean you can't go out and eat? Like, I would love to go out and eat. I just can't. And it's not the same. Like, I don't want to sit outside. Well, why don't you go inside? Well, obviously, having empathy, knowing that people are, especially the way this, current conditions with the pandemic, it is affecting everybody in different ways. And accessibility is very, very, very different. So please understand that other people don't know where you're coming from. The other thing that I have to ask, on a social side, I don't have a rule of thumb. So please don't say, well, I did it 10 times and now, what's next? But even people like Gary Vee and other people that I listen to online and read their books, give 10 times before you ask for one anything. You are there. You are a resource for people. Look at yourself as a resource. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world. But at this stage in social, if you are nothing but a retweeter and a news poster or a ranter, the first time that you're able to send a direct message and say, hey, I know you're out of work. A buddy of mine in your town is looking. That speaks volumes. And you don't do that with a conniving purpose. You do that because again, going back to empathy, right? That people are kind of down on their luck, and you've seen their LinkedIn, because every LinkedIn person who is out is open to work. So if you see that, shoot them over a job thing. Say, listen, I don't know your current situation. If you're still looking, here's an opportunity in Manhattan. I know you're kind of close. Hopefully this works out. Let me know if I can be of any service. You're not going out and doing anything crazy. All you are is just forwarding. Instead of in the public, you send it through the DMs. There are positive things that happen in the DMs, regardless of what the actors say. And again, going back to the final point, find your people, right? Find the people that you connect with. Where I said, go out and find a role, not necessarily a role model, but, find somebody that kind of like what they're doing. But ultimately, don't be like, if you're going to AV and looking what I do, you don't want to be Chris Neto. You want to be the best you, right? You don't want to be me. You want to have your unique touch on things, and you want to be who you are. You don't want to copy what I'm doing. I'm not 100. I'm not right. Not 100%. I'm not even 75%. A lot of the stuff I do is missteps, but that's me being hard on myself. But you as an individual and your personality added to it, you can't go wrong. So develop who the best you are, right? Don't try to emulate a superstar because you're never going to get there. Likes, vanity metrics like likes and impressions. I use impressions to tell me whether I did something right, especially when it comes to a chat. So when my chat does well, I can see the impressions go up, but that's it. That's the only reason, is to gauge. I can't live by impressions. I can't live by likes, but I could tell you, as I connected with the crowd and the more I get in tune with the community and I found my people, right? Things change. It becomes a better organic process. If you go online now on Christmas Day and say, wow, I really, I got a Mandalorian Lego set and I'm damn proud of it, right? Show your kid side, show your inner youth, and you will amazingly find that there are people that will connect with you. I'm like, you know what? I asked for the same thing. I got a lightsaber. Like, dude, you're 40, you got a lightsaber? Absolutely. Let me go get mine. So that's the type of connections that you want. Those are the real connections that'll carry over until one day you can actually meet in person, not some creepy, Hallmark movie type stuff. I'm talking about where you can go to a trade show. I had to go Hallmark because we were talking about the Hallmark movies before, but none of that crazy stuff. What I'm talking about is eventually we are going to be in the same place at the same time in a networking or a social setting. And when that happens, you will have a much more real connection. The only difference is that you will find out that I am much shorter in person than I am online.
All right. Well, that's it. Yeah. That's the putting your real self out there, and people will still find you as tall in stature and personality. Then that's what it's all about. Yeah, that's great. This is all really good advice. And I feel like people can run headfirst into this now and just make this their new way of being. So yeah, I'm really glad we talked about this, and I hope that people out there feel like they can be their best self on the internet and connect with other people and give back and really find new connections. So yeah, thank you all so much. I'm really glad we talked about this today. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening to the Tide Generator podcast, produced by AVIXA. Find it wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time.